Hi, I'm Blake with X Archery. Join us this week as myself, Isabelle, and Kaylee chase Roosevelt bulls on public land in Washington. So after the success in Idaho, we decided that we should pack up and get home as quickly as we could because our over-the-counter season in Washington started on that Saturday. So we left Friday and we took off. We ended up getting home real late Friday, or really early Saturday morning. We took the day to kind of get cleaned up, get our stuff together, shoot a few arrows. Isabelle needed to shoot a few arrows to kind of reconfirm some marks. Kaylee did as well. Got our packs, repacked, got everything that we needed for our Washington hunt. And then we met up Sunday morning and went out for Sunday and Monday. Sunday was kind of a slow day. We were out all day. It was so hot and dry that there was no rutting activity. We didn't hear any bugles, no responses. Hiked a lot, spent a lot of time in the timber. Problem with that is that it was so dry that every step you take was super crunchy. So wasn't a tactic that was really working very well. We would sit and we would call a little bit, no responses, nothing coming in. I think everything was just pretty lethargic, nothing really going on. Put on quite a few miles on Sunday to no avail. I think we saw, what did we see? We ended up seeing 3 spikes and maybe a cow or 2, but the cows, I mean, it is an open unit for cows, but they weren't interested in cows, and then spikes aren't legal. So nothing Sunday. Monday morning, we got right into a herd. We actually spotted a 4-point first before even seeing the rest of the herd, and then as we were making our approach on the 4-point, we had spotted the rest of the herd. There were some cows, and there was actually a bigger 5x6 in the herd. They had kind of moved off, and we figured our best shot was going to be to go after the 4x4. He was kind of acting like a satellite bull, and he had kind of moved out off to the side. So we had a group of elk down the valley from us, and then we had the 4x4 up on the hill that we figured, since the wind was good, we thought we'd be able to make a play on. He was actually out in the open, but he was in a spot where I thought that we could probably go straight at him if we took our time. So that's exactly what we did. The truck was way up on the top, so we had hiked down through the timber, popped out into this opening, spotted him at about 300 yards. He was actually bedded down, and we just slowly army crawled at him. And we had a couple of stumps and stuff to work with to keep in between us and the bull. And we just army crawled right at him, and was very, very slow, like very slow. You'd move a couple of feet, you'd stop, move a couple of feet, you'd stop. And we did that. At one point, he had stood up and was kind of looking our way, and I thought that we might have been busted, but the wind was really good. And again, we had that big stump in front of us, so he couldn't see us. And he just kind of repositioned. He walked back and he laid down again. And we were getting really close to this big old growth stump, and I was like, hey, if we can get up to this stump, I think we're going to be within bow range. I think we'll have a shot. So we got about 20 yards away from the stump, and he stood up again, and now he's close to the edge where he could drop down over this. He's in a clearing, but he could drop down over the edge and then make his way down to the timber. So I was like, okay, we need to get up and we need to move. So we got up in a crouched position, and we hustled our way to that stump as quickly as we could. Not really worrying about if he was going to hear us at that point. It was just, hey, we got to make our move now because he's about ready to be gone. So we get to the stump, and I lean out and I range him, and I get him at 61 yards. And, Isabelle already had an arrow knocked, and I said, okay, step out. Generally speaking, when that happens, they're not going to bolt from my experience. So that's exactly what he did. He gave us a good broadside shot and just stood there and kind of took in what was happening. So at that point, he can see us. I think he's fully aware that something's off or that we're people or whatever. But he allowed her to draw back and make a shot. Her shot was pretty good. Little bit lower than we wanted. He was quartered away slightly, so the line was really good, but a little bit lower than I would have wanted to be. And he takes off over the edge, right? So I'm thinking in my head, okay, he's bolted down into the timber, right? So we didn't give him any time as far as going and looking for first blood. I figured, hey, we'll go mark first blood right now. We'll let him run off in the timber. The shot's not bad. I think it's a lethal shot, but I do think it's a little bit low, and I think we should give him a little bit of time. So we go up there, and there's blood everywhere, right? The blood's great. And I'm like, oh, maybe you hit him better than I thought. Because you know how things kind of happen quickly in the moment, and it's sometimes kind of hard to tell exactly where the shot placement was, and that's kind of where I was at. I was like, I think I saw where it hit. We'll look back at the tape and see what's going on, but I think you hit a little bit low. And she kind of had felt the same way. So it's like, all right, well, we'll just mark first blood here, and we'll give it an hour or so before we really start looking. It wasn't raining. We were in no danger of the blood getting washed away. So we'll just sit on it. Well, we get up to first blood, and one of them had, or maybe, I can't even remember, maybe it was myself that noticed, but one of them noticed antler tips that he was only 40, 50 yards down the hill. He had ran down there and just stopped, right? So the hit was probably better than we thought. He just sit there and stopped and hunched up, right? So I was like, knock another arrow, knock another arrow. We moved down the hill to where we could see him. He had moved around close to the timber, and he stopped at broadside, and I ranged him at 52 yards. And one of the things that I have always worked with them on, and really any hunter, is the ability to make a quick second follow-up shot if you need to. A lot of people will fumble with the release, or they'll fumble getting another arrow knocked. This isn't her first rodeo. Isabelle's killed a couple of really nice bulls, and super cool, calm, collected. She was able to knock another arrow and draw back and make just a beautiful shot on him.
Yeah.
So 52 yards. As he's getting ready to go down into the timber, she makes a quick follow-up shot on him, hits him good in the lungs, and he takes off. So now we're pretty happy. Okay, we know we had, I think, an okay shot on the first shot. The second shot at 52, we know you smoked him. So let's just sit here. Let's give him a minute. We watched him crash down into the timber. We know he crossed the stream down there and went up the hill. So he's probably not going to go very far, but let's give him a little bit. So we're sitting there, and this definitely isn't her biggest bull that she's ever shot, but any over-the-counter bull, especially in Washington, Western Washington, I think is an accomplishment, especially with archery equipment, right? So she's a little shooken up. She's pretty happy. So finally an hour passes, or probably close to an hour. I usually tend to get a little bit antsy. So we definitely give it a little bit of time, and we started tracking. We got good blood everywhere. I mean, the blood is a steady, solid stream all the way, right? I mean, there was never any point where we were looking for blood. It was always there's blood, there's blood, there's blood, there's blood, right? Well, he actually ended up going quite a bit further than what we had expected him to. He probably went 200, 250 yards, right? Which, when you talk about an elk that's running, they can cover 200 yards in a few seconds, right? That's nothing. I mean, in hindsight, he had probably covered that, in retrospect, he had probably covered that time 10, 15, 20 seconds, right? Because he bolted. But when you're following blood that good, it's a little bit mind-boggling, right? You're just like, man, there's so much blood. He shouldn't have went more than 20, 30 yards. But these are tough animals, they're 800, 900 pound animals, even not fully mature. They're still 800, 900 pound animals. So he had made it about 250 yards. He came out of this little timber that we're in. He crossed a little corner of a clearing and back into the same timber, down into the river bottom. And so we're slowly stalking while we get up. And I'm like, oh, man, there he is. He went into the creek bottom. And I had got the brush in the creek was super dense, and I had just happened to notice some tan in the brush, and I'm like, oh man, he's right in front of us. Well, he was standing when I saw him, and I walked up to 15 yards away, and he's right in front of me, but the brush is thick, so we don't have a shot. So I was like, all right, well, let's move up to the side, and because he's in a creek bottom, right, and there's a bank on both sides. I'm like, well, let's get up on the bank and see if we can get a shot into him, get a final kill shot on him, drop him right here. So it was so thick that we could not see into there. We could see tan, but we couldn't get a good, ethical, clean shot on him. So I was just like, I don't know what to do. So, I have Isabelle draw back, and I'm tossing rocks in there, thinking that maybe he'll work his way up the other side, and she'll get a 20-yard shot, wide open shot.
He's got another rock. Hold it, you got it.
And he doesn't. He just ends up laying down. So I'm like, okay, he's hurt. He's done. But I would still like to get another arrow in him. I think it's our responsibility to try and finish him off as quickly as possible. So we were like, all right, well, let's backtrack and let's go up the other side and see if there's any other lanes looking down in. And, I thought I had an okay lane, but Kaylee went up higher than me, and she was like, no, come up here. Here's a good lane. So we went up there, and we could see him pretty well. There were still a couple of branches here and there, but from the seated position, I had her sit down, and we could kind of see, and I'm like, okay, well, you can go over that branch. You should land, you should be able to put it in the lungs from right here. So he was bedded, kind of facing away from us, but he was rolled over, giving us a shot at the lungs, right? So, I whispered in her ear, hey, just aim to the right of the spine there and dump one in his lungs, and that should be it. There you go, he rolled for you. Just to the right of the spine if you can. Yep. Smoked him, right? Shot. So she drew back from the seated position, and honestly, this isn't even something that we really sit and practice, but I always preach just practice perfect shot execution when you need to make these weird, these different shots, these kneeling shots, these seated shots, whatever. You'll just be able to do it because we practice perfect form and execution all the time. So the form and the execution is there regardless of what your stance has to be, right? So she seated, she drew back and put just a perfect finishing shot in him. And from the time the arrow hit him on that third shot, from the time that he had finally expired, was maybe 20, 30 seconds at most. His lungs started filling up with blood. He did a couple of coughs, and then he just tipped over. There he goes. He's done. Good job, Isabelle. What do you think?
Super cool.
He's not your normal monster, but fuck, he was hard. So overall, I mean, it was an awesome hunt. It went about as well as we could have hoped. I think all three shots were honestly pretty good shots. I think any one of the three shots would have killed it, but we wanted to do our diligence and try and kill him as quickly as possible to be as ethical as we possibly can.
If this goes on me, I'm gonna be mad.
I don't know if I'm gonna be able to make this one look good.
We gotta do what we did and sit way back.
How does he have so many points?
This was like my first one, remember?
Yeah.
Everyone's gotta have a little one.
We broke off the time.
Well,
It's not off.
broke off the tip. God, you lost 1.5 inches on that break, dang it.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Make the struggle way down.
Let's take this.
Man, I don't know if I can sit back far enough.
It did die in like the worst spot.
Yeah, I mean, he is in a... This sucks. We were pretty fortunate that where he ran to, he actually ran up closer to a road for us, which was really nice. So it was a road that we were able to access. You got to drive kind of all the way around the mountain, but you were able to get back around and really close to that spot. So it was all uphill, but we only had like a 200 to 300 yard pack or so. But in the spot that he was, we were literally in the middle of this creek in this, I mean, really kind of a river bottom. There was not much space to work, so the quartering process and kind of taking care of him was a little cramped and a little bit hard to work with. But you know, these girls have been at it for this is like their 4th year elk hunting now, and you know, I was able to just sit back and keep my hands clean and let them do everything. I mean, they quartered this thing all by themselves. They got the packs ready to go, and I'm just kind of the muscle to carry it all out. So it was a really fun hunt, and you know, very successful. And you know, now we just got to try and get Kaylee one next weekend. So stay tuned, and we'll let you know how it goes.